Don Davenport.
Here.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Mark Tuzzi. Sorry,
Here.
this was not alphabetical order.
No,
We're
it's
not,
not.
we're not on Thursday. Sorry. I go in
here.
order of the higher
I'm here.
seated. Mark Tuzzi.
I'm here.
Sorry, I missed my turn here. Please stand.
You're in trouble.
Well, the chair always goes last. Mark will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Me?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Pledge
Are you-
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we'll begin discussing the latest feedback and developments from DESI.
Okay,
Let's see.
thank you. To summarize the guidance that I received from the committee last time, I think you basically wanted me to try to do everything to make the comments go away. So that's basically what I did. We talked about the comments at length, so I think I will just point some things out. In section, the preamble section, there wasn't much substantive change. In section 1, this was the discussion of the weighted vote. The one change here is we decided to go from re-weighting every 5 years to weighting every 10 years. And I would point out that a very astute reader named Don Davenport has pointed out that there's language in the agreement that talks about weighting. It's already there. So this is really just like adding it to another section of the language. Or the language of another section, I should say. I didn't actually realize that until he pointed it out.
I knew there was a reason why we had you on this.
They have no life.
Moving on to,
Can I have a question about,
Sure.
they're insisting on putting on that the person takes office on July 1st.
they're not insisting on that, that's the
We
school
did.
committee's preference.
Yeah. It is a far better way to go.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm disagreeing with putting it on the ballot.
No, it was already in the ballot.
Oh, putting it on the ballot. The change there is they're saying you can't have a start date that's not immediately after the election, but in order
Why?
to comply with summer, what?
Why?
Because if you put it in the agreement, you can do it. But it has to be made clear to the voters and to the candidates that they don't take office the next
Okay.
day.
So, I don't mean to belabor this, but no other office has that. If you elect a state representative, it doesn't say he takes
Yeah.
January 20th.
Yeah.
President of the United States, State Senator, no one says that. And I don't know if,
You mean on the ballot?
on the ballot, it doesn't-
Yeah, can I say that it
doesn't
seems like
say
a
it.
lot of stuff that they're putting in here
Yeah.
and they're insisting on, it's like, really? Like, do we
Put
need
it
all
this way.
that?
Put it in the agreement, and if you don't put it on the ballot, who cares?
well, I guess they'll care.
If they ever review the ballot, they'll ever see the ballots.
Does
So
our
the
attorney
second-
say that all these changes have to be made?
So the second question I have about the ballot is, the Secretary of State specifically says there's only several things that could be on the ballot. The name and address of the person,
Yeah.
the political
Incumbent.
party,
Yeah.
if they're a candidate for re-election, and you can make a statement like former state representative or former mayor, something like that. That's the only things you can put on the ballot.
Interesting. So there's a little conflict there.
You can,
So what would you put this, if you elect this person, he takes office July 1st?
I probably wouldn't put a whole sentence. I would probably just put, select however many for school committee, term begins July 1st.
Yeah.
I might have to go to court on this one.
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters.
I think if you give it to the Secretary of State, then he'd say, what are you talking about? You can't put out that on the ballot.
Well, I would hope that one branch of state government is not giving us advice that conflicts with another branch of state government, but it's not impossible that that could happen.
All right, well, I mean, it's not the end of the world.
And if we already had that part about weighted voting, do we have to add this section in here?
I would say based on the number of comments and the amount of time they spent on that, they would strongly want to see it in this section.
Apparently.
Yeah,
they
but
didn't-
I
apparently
strongly
they didn't
want-
notice it either.
Yeah.
It's a- Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I mean, I do think this brings it much more to the
Yeah,
forefront.
that's what you-
You know, I've had some people from Hamden and some people in office in Hamden joke around with me all the time about, oh, you get more votes than I do because you're in Wilbraham. And I'm telling you, it's a, we understand the reality, but at the same time, it's kind of a slap in the face, isn't it? I mean, do we really need to do this?
To wait it.
No, we know, we already have language in here to weight it. Do we really need to put all this extra in there? Like, let's have love between the two towns. Let's not be, you know,
Don, could you point out where that language is, you had found it for,
Which section? Oh,
about the weighted?
let's see what I have. It was, in the original agreement, it was in the original agreement of the 2015 agreement, it was in, there was a part that said intermediate, committee, and it was in that, and then and then also in the 2015 agreement, it was, I think, each member shall be, where, you know, see the cross out here, each member shall be entitled to one vote at all committee meetings, I believe that was it. I have it on my.
Oh, that's right, it's right there.
Right?
Yeah, it says each member shall be entitled to one vote at all.
what page?
It's page one, section A1.
Oh, I see it right there, yeah.
Oh, John, did you put page numbers on?
I did put page numbers on. So this language that's crossed out, which is original to it, is very similar to the new language that they're asking us to put in.
Right.
I guess, yeah, it's not very different at all. So I mean, I could go back and say, could we just keep our original language that already discusses how that's going to be done?
Yeah.
Although, you know,
I mean,
What if you just left it as is and didn't mention it, and if they don't print it back out? It's not saying anything different.
right. We could submit it with
I
the
think
original language.
sometimes when you, and I'm not saying anything disparaging about these ladies, they put a lot of work into helping us and we really appreciate it, but I think sometimes you can lose sight of the forest from the trees, isn't that the expression,
Mhm.
right? And I think we can stand our ground on some things. I mean, if they say, we will not sign this agreement if you don't have this or that, okay, then we can, but really,
I think we want to be clear on what recommendations versus the requirements.
right, exactly.
Right, so we want to make sure that we include all of the requirements, so we make sure that that's going to get, signed off by the commissioner. But recommendations, I mean, that's just like,
recommendation.
right, it's just
Yeah.
that. So I think it's for us to consider.
I can send a communication to that effect and copy you all, see what happens. Mark?
It just seems to me that we're just,
Splitting hairs?
Yeah.
we're splitting hairs, so just get it done. I mean, we're splitting hairs and it isn't gonna make a difference. Nobody knows what's in this agreement. After we get through this, we're gonna put it away and we're gonna forget about 90% of this.
That, which is an issue.
Well, no, I mean, but most of it is just very routine stuff. I mean,
It's fine, it's just it was in there, because it's really not, so it's really not a change, I guess was my point.
Mm-hmm.
We just never did it. All right.
Okay, in section C, we added a secretary, page 2, section C, top. We added a secretary and a treasurer, those are mandatory school committee positions. So just listing those there.
Secretary and treasurer are the same person or has to be two different people?
They may be the same person.
Oh,
They may not.
who may be the same person?
And they don't have to be a member of the school committee, so the school committee can find someone else to be the secretary and treasurer.
Traditionally, we've always had it be a member of the school committee, I think. Well, the secretary, but they were also the treasurer technically, or?
You have a separate treasurer, I think.
You have a separate treasurer, don't you?
Yes.
Separate, yeah.
So that's one thing there. Nothing really in section 2. In section 3, we added the language about certain students may go into other schools for high school as well. They pointed out that just as Donna pointed out, not all high school students go to high school. You know, some of them may go to special education programs, some of them may go to disciplinary issues, etc. And so that language that you saw before around middle school is here. It's slightly altered because they pointed out
Not sure.
that not only special education, but also disciplinary reasons, or then just the sort of umbrella clause, other reasons consistent with school law, would be a reason to not be at high school.
Oh, I see.
So then, the main the main thing in this next section was pulling out the exceptions into their own section. Because we had the language around students being able to transfer, or students being able to be reassigned underneath elementary, and it made it seem like that was a provision that was only applicable to elementary students. So now there's a section called exceptions, which applies to everyone.
Okay.
In lease of member schools,
And again, takes Thornton Burgess, so.
That's,
I feel like
Oh,
I've
they're on
done
the next
that a
page.
million times.
they're on the next page.
Oh, still
But I still have to take up.
Yeah.
You still have to take out the.
I'm sure it's a mistake I'm making, but sometimes I feel like the edits don't stick.
It's a Wilbur.
Yeah, just be so easy. It's because you were in Google, sometimes it does that.
There is something in this next thing at the top of page 4. All other leased buildings, that's a deletion that was discussed in our last conversation, my last conversation with SC staff. Is they asked, are you leasing anything besides schools? And we said, no. So they said, why put a provision that talks about leasing other buildings that are non-schools? So that was just a removal.
What if you do?
I'm just thinking that's it.
For storage,
What if you
I mean, what if you have,
Why would you not
what if you
do
have to, what if you have to close a portion of a school for a couple of months because of some kind of emergency repair you need to lease?
well, then it would be a school then.
Right.
But let's say if we leased a place for storage. I think actually, don't we have that? Don't we have, isn't there some stuff from the old Minichog that's in some warehouse somewhere in Ludlow?
Well, that was,
Oh, but
the
this
only
is-
thing I know in Ludlow was when we had the mold situation at that middle school.
I don't know why it would hurt, we'll just go back to that.
I think we have something, I
We
think
used
there
to
is.
go, because sometimes if you needed a desk or a chair, they'd go to Ludlow and look for you and come back, the custodian would come back.
We used to do that, I don't know if that, I know years ago that was
You're
true.
right, it was
Although-
true, we don't own it.
Although
We don't
further,
own it or lease it though.
although further, it's,
It's not our
if you
thing.
read it further, it says for events that are sponsored by the leaser, but not limiting annual special town meeting, so I don't, elections. You wouldn't lease a building for election, park and recreation programs,
Right.
Whatever, I don't think it matters.
no, okay, probably.
I would rename, again, we talked about this last time, I would rename the middle school. The school, the name isn't correct as it is, but I would still rename it before this gets finalized.
School, Wilbraham Middle School.
I mean, call it Hamden Wilbraham Middle School, I just think you need to rename it.
Yeah, it's probably easier.
The river, on down.
In vocational schools, as I was going through this, one of the things they had suggested is streamlining by taking out the verbal description of the calculation and just referencing the section where it's located. So you see all that cross out at the bottom of the vocational schools paragraph is replaced by the language in accordance with section 4, because that's where it is. The other thing I noticed when I was talking about going through with a mind to streamlining is I had called out students who were attending a vocational school other than Career Tech as being treated separately, because at the time we were thinking about the option of directly having towns directly work with the vocational schools. But now, since we've gone with the option of just including the vocational costs within the operating budget, it really doesn't matter if it's Career Tech or it's some other vocational school. It'll always go to the operating budget. So I think we can take out that sentence about if a student is residing in a member town and goes to a program other than Career Tech. I think we could just say the cost of tuition for attending vocational school and the cost of transportation when necessary will be operated to the operational cost for the district and assessed to the member towns. So whatever school you go to doesn't really matter. And then I see there's something hanging off here. I think this was language that I had just put there to copy in. Okay, so then we go to section 4. This is the biggest one. We had comments 36 through 49, all in relation to section 4, and I wasn't sure I understood all of them. So that is what I asked for the focus of our last teleconference to be, and I think I have greater clarity and have some new edits based on that. First was, they pointed out that there's another section of the agreement where we talk about the budget being presented in accordance with the chart of accounts, as Doug did in his draft, but they said you don't need to have that in both places. So we're just striking the old paragraph A and leaving it in the other section that has to do more with the budget. Next, big change, I would say, comes in the new letter C, capital costs. One of the things they said was that in accordance with the terms of the lease is not acceptable because it doesn't provide protection for the district against changes to the leases. So,
So if for some reason we sign a lease that says
A different
$100,000 and we don't see it, this protects us, it doesn't, I don't think.
well, what they're saying is if you change the terms of the lease to that extent, you should really go through the process of changing the agreement again.
Oh, come on. These guys are just trying to justify their jobs.
I would say
That's ridiculous.
we can do what we want here, let them fight us on that.
Yeah. That's ridiculous, Dave. I mean, so whatever.
In accordance with the terms of the leases.
So do you want me to send that back?
Was that a recommendation or a requirement?
Yeah, we're not, we don't want to make that change, thank you very much. Are you gonna not approve this because we have that sentence in there? And then give us the yes or no?
Okay, I can add that to the email. Label this as email 2. Okay,
Can I go back to, so B is defines capital cost as 5,000, and C you got capital cost 35,000.
I did get clarification on that. As you may recall from the discussion that we had of this, I think it was at a school committee meeting or a joint meeting, where Doug asked if, was this essentially permissive or obligatory? In other words, does it just empower us to call things above $5,000 capital, or does it require us to put them on the capital plan? And the response that we got to that was, they actually don't care how we treat it, whether we want to put it in the operating budget or put it on the capital plan. However, this is for reporting purposes. When we do our end-of-year report to the state, we have to identify all items that satisfy this definition as capital items. So it doesn't affect how we have to do the capital planning, in other words.
Boy, it's hard for me to understand why you would wanna put any hard numbers in this.
Yeah,
Hopefully this document's gonna last for a while, and then you don't have to update it every 5 or 10 years. And when you put a $35,000 or a $5,000 number in there, in 10 years, it's an antiquated number.
right.
We could try referencing the regulation that defines capital currently as $5,000 in more than 1 year.
There you
Yeah, because if they change the regulation,
go. Yeah.
I mean,
All right, and then paragraph D is that paragraph that we have been talking about. This is the one about the middle school and capital costs associated with the middle school. The change here is the one I've already pointed out. We had said, you know, that, okay, I wrote the sentence twice. Before we had, some students might not attend for special education reasons. Now it says the fact that certain students from any of those grades may be assigned elsewhere to accommodate such things as special education needs, disciplinary reasons, or other
Yeah.
reasons consistent with the law. I should have kept, then should go to, shall not affect this language.
Also, when we say that building will be treated as a district-owned building, okay? Can we say that it'll be treated as a district building rather than a district-owned building? Because we don't own it. But if we said it's a district building, and then therefore the expenditures we divide based on the number of students. I don't understand why owned is even there. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, I wrote that down the other day.
Okay, and then the next changes here really had to do with reordering the section. They're thinking really a flow because we went from capital to operating capital, and so just trying to keep the capital costs together. So section E and F were formerly sections G and H, I think, and G and H were formerly E and F. So those are just reorders, not really anything substantive there.
Can we just, is there anything that we can add to section D that would make this more of a friendly amendment rather than something that is going to be the stumbling block to getting this passed? Is there something or some language that we can put in there, or some kind of statute of limitations for, you know, like, for example, well, you should have done those windows before, why are we putting these windows in now, why am I paying for this cost of windows back then, and stuff, just to make this so that we don't want this to be the thorn, right, or that, you know, that, you know, that little scratch that you can't reach and it's making you crazy. I don't want to have it, and I, from my own personal opinion, I thought that this is, if I was a Hamdenite, trademark, if I was a Hamdenite, that I wouldn't be as comfortable with this language, because then, you know, what if all kinds of great changes happen and then suddenly, oh, it's not a district building anymore, we're gonna move you all to the high school, and we just spent, you know, $2 million on fixing a building. On the same side, I do appreciate Wilbraham saying, you know, for about, you know, what, 7, 8 years, we've let students from Hamden come and use the school, and you know, we just put a new roof on there, and Wilbraham paid that, and they did not ask for Hamden to participate. And I think that if we could just figure out maybe another couple sentences, one that would make Hamden feel a little protected, and another one that would make Wilbraham feel more protected, or something like that. And since we have you two here, I would like to hash it out if we could, if there's a possibility.
Fine with the way it is.
Here's what you're gonna run into.
Yeah.
Did you help the teacher here and pass these out?
I didn't know he had this, so.
This is from when they did the feasibility assessment on whether Thornton Burgess would be a consolidated school or whether Wilbraham Middle School would be a consolidated school. It was decided that Wilbraham would be the consolidated school, which would turn out to be a consolidated school. So they pointed out all the deficiencies that had to be repaired at that time, 10 years ago, that should have been repaired to make it a consolidated school. Few, if any, have been taken care of. So the question that people will ask is, you had this feasibility study, you had 10 years to take care of these things, you didn't take care of it, well, why are we gonna pay for it now? We were happy with I'm giving you the argument, I'm not saying I agree with all this, but we're happy with our kids in Thornton Burgess. You made it so we went to Wilbraham Middle School, you didn't correct these deficiencies, the deficiencies are still there 10 years later, and now you want me to pay, like for instance, $2 million for doors, when clearly the first thing they say in the assessment is exterior and interior doors have to be fixed before you can make it a consolidated school, which it is not. So that's what you're gonna run up against.
And the only thing I would suggest to that is, none of this stuff is gonna get voted in without a vote. So you have a choice at town meeting to vote yes or no. So you will have a say in it.
So I guess my point is, if the school needs these repairs, and it goes to Wilbraham, and they say, okay, fine, and it goes to Hammond, and we say no, then you're still living with a school with these deficiencies, so how do we
Resolve that.
resolve that?
I don't know if there is a good answer. I really don't. I mean, in the same time, I think from a Wilbraham's perspective, you're like, well, if Hammond says no, it's our
Your
asset.
building, you own the building.
How do we protect our asset now?
Right,
And,
right.
and so I think there's a finger, you know, either way you look at it, is there's, and I think you just gotta look at it, and hopefully you're thinking about it, because our kids are being educated in there. And we have to make the building safe and secure and sound.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that, but I think the point is, why, I'm being a devil's advocate, the point is gonna be, why did you do it 10 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when the kids moved in there in 2000, when you finally closed the building in 2017, why didn't you fix these things before, when you had a report that says you need to do this before it becomes a consolidated school?
Yeah, I'm not sure of this report, I haven't seen this, but I mean, I don't wanna think we're ignoring the building. Has everything been done that's been, asked for? Of course not. But I don't think
So
we're
I think,
ignoring the building.
one of the things that could help mitigate this is if we could get a list of if you take what was the deficiencies they said, we'll see if any of those have been addressed in the last 10 years. I'm sure.
I'm not really, from a Wilbraham perspective, I'm speaking for myself only, but I would push back on something of that nature, because if we're gonna allow you in at no cost,
Well, you're not allowing us in at no cost. We pay 20% of the bills it is now.
we pay 20% of of Green Meadows too. We pay 80% of Green Meadows,
Yeah,
right?
you do.
So,
You do.
the way I look at it is we're allowing you in at no upfront cost.
You're not allowing us in, okay? It's a
Allowing,
regional-
probably not the
it's a
right word, probably
regional-
not the right
it's a
word,
regional
fair
school
point.
district.
But it's, but
The
but
kids have to
you're
be
taking
educated.
benefit,
So you don't give us permission to go to school, our kids gotta go to school, we're going there. So let's stop with the term allow us in, because that's a very
you've
negative.
enjoyed, let me
that's
say
a
it
very
differently.
negative-
Let me say it
very
differently.
negative term. We enjoy Thornton Burgess.
We've enjoyed, the students of Hamden have enjoyed the opportunity to attend school there. And,
Mark, I think you're missing your verbiage is all wrong,
okay,
okay? Enjoy the opportunity. We have to educate our kids. We have a regional district. They go to the schools. It's not, you're not giving them an
I guess-
opportunity.
I
You're
guess-
not giving them, you're not allowing them. It's the law.
I guess if,
So I can see your point about, you know, the kids are in there, the kids, and Tim made a very good point to me in compelling, but matter of fact, I sent him a note and thanked him for it, that, you know, your kids are there, so they should go to a school that's safe, clean, efficient, and healthy. Okay, good. I'm just telling you that the questions that are gonna be raised at town meeting is, why did you take care of these things years ago? It's your building, you owned it, you know. So, that's all. So how
Can
do
I-
we resolve that?
Can I ask clarification on this conversation?
Yes.
So, you posed a factual question, which is, could we just get information about what on this list has been
Yeah.
addressed? Which, I don't have that information now, I
course
assume
not.
that it's,
No.
I assume that it is, information that's available we could get in some way. You said that knowing what was addressed and what wasn't addressed is something you'd push back on, why?
no, I would push back on the idea that if we're gonna start saying, well, there's pre-existing conditions, if you will, and we're not gonna pay for any of these pre-existing conditions. I just think that's the wrong attitude, the wrong approach. Hamden students have been in the building for a number of years at no cost. We've not pushed back on that at any level. And I think it's time to share those costs.
The cost is $1 a year that you lease the building to the district.
I mean, in maintenance, I'm talking about capital costs. That's what I mean, when I say cost, I mean capital costs. So maybe I should be clear on that. And we've not made any issues around this over the last 7 or 8, however long it's been. And now we're saying it wants to become a regional school, we're like, fine, let's make it a regional school, we'll lease it for $1, let's just share in the capital costs. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's quite reasonable, frankly. And if Hamden doesn't wanna do that, then I think we have a different set of concerns from a town perspective. At least, I'm speaking for myself, I haven't discussed that with the board, but I will. But I do think that's a real concern. And if we can't come to that agreement, I would encourage us not to move forward with the change to the regional agreement. Again, speaking for myself only.
But, I don't wanna take your side, but then you're in the same spot. You have to pay for all the capital thing. I mean, if the agreement doesn't get changed. Anyway.
We go down a slippery slope there, which I don't really wanna go down to tonight. I mean, at some point, Wilbraham's gonna push back and say, this isn't fair to Wilbraham. It's just not.
Are you speaking as yourself, or are you speaking as a select board member?
I think, are you asking if I'm speaking for myself or a select board member? I'm both, so I'm speaking for both.
So you're
But
speaking as a representative from the select?
My last statement, I think, is fair to say, I think the Wilbraham Select Board would push back. I don't wanna say too much about that, but yes, I think that's a fair statement.
And what, throw the kids out of the school?
I don't know. I don't know what options we have at that point.
No.
I mean, at some point, we have to be responsible. And I think that's.
Yeah, so
I
10
think-
years ago, I guess the point people will raise is, 10 years ago, you should have been responsible. you closed the school, so we should have had a 10-year plan to how these deficiencies were gonna be taken care of. Now, you understand, it's the same thing, we have the same problem with our municipal buildings, because other things come up and you gotta pay for them, and you'll say, we can't do it this year or this, you know what I mean? But eventually, the clock runs out on these things, and that's where we are, and I think the people will say, why are we paying for a building we don't own, we don't have any investment in it? Yes, our children go there, we wanna do something about it, but why weren't these taken care of? That's the question that I will have to address, and I'll have to say, I don't know.
We were at a meeting last night, a capital meeting for Hamden and Wilbraham.
Yep.
And the question came up about the bleachers, okay? And we have been putting so many man-hours in every single year of rehabbing those bleachers to get it so that it won't kill anybody, all right? We've put money into it, I think like close to $500,000 over the past, right?
We put some significant money into,
If you add them all up,
Repair.
yeah, into just keep it, just life support, just, you know, keeping that going. And the man-hours of being put into that, and then, you know, fingers crossed and saying Hail Marys every time someone jumps
Okay,
up and
so I
down and
guess
cheers.
what I'm
So-
asking for is,
Hang on, but the response from that committee last night was, well, look at this. Hey, you wanted to replace them 9 years ago, and we got 9 more years out of those bleachers. Like it was a good thing that it wasn't replaced. And and I understand that thinking, but at the same time, it's like, what if someone got hurt? What if someone got killed? What if something happened? Then they're gonna be going, oh, I guess we should have replaced it. You know what I'm saying? So I understand on, you know, being as frugal as you can, and let's, you know, push as much as we can to save money and stuff. But then now that comes to the point where we're gonna start making some of these changes, and
but you
finding
gave-
that
you gave-
agreement.
But you gave a reason for fixing the bleachers. For 9 years, you've tried to do everything possible to stretch it
nothing
out
more
to
to
make
do,
it
yeah.
work. So I'm asking for, can we get a list of what was done, so we can say, yeah, you know, they did fix 10 doors, they did fix the ventilation system, they did put the roof on, you know? It was, so, that's, if we can do that, that would be helpful.
I would suggest again, and I understand we're not the ultimate decision makers, the towns are, but if we can't come to some agreement on this, I would encourage us not to move forward.
With this section.
If the two select boards can't come to some sort of agreement on how we're going to handle this component, I would really think we need to think hard about moving
So
forward,
maybe the two select boards have to meet just on this.
perhaps.
I also-
If it's a real issue, I mean, if it's a real issue, that's what I've been asking, is this an issue? I think I brought it up several meetings ago.
but I think it also comes, you know, like you just said, so the ultimate deciders of this are both towns. And being able to stand up at town meeting and say, this is why I support this is reasonable.
Recognize
And it's being able to understand and say, this is what the people are asking. So if we can get this information out and be able to speak to this prior, then it can be a no-brainer, you know, and it can be something that we can pass unanimously. But it's something that we have to, it would be negligent and irresponsible of us to, and, you know, silly of us to believe that people aren't going to have these questions and concerns. So it is
Fair.
important that we do have some sort of response, whether people agree with it and whether they want to move forward with it, I think is a different.
I
that's
encourage the
their problem.
conversation,
Yeah.
I just think we need to come to an agreement before we move forward. Because if we don't have an agreement before we move forward, then I think it's even a much more difficult start. So
Fair.
probably not the right word.
Okay, so we'll continue. So you're gonna meet on your own, right? And you guys are gonna hash some things out and we'll
Yes,
come back,
I
it's about
will-
planning a
I will
duties.
approach your chairman, your chairperson. to have a-
Please do
Yeah.
that, please do that.
So we'll see each other
Would
back
we
here in
like-
2 weeks and maybe by
Would,
then.
would you like to have us at that meeting also,
I'll let you know.
as part of planning?
We can talk. I don't know, I wouldn't know why it would be, well, I'll let you work
It
that
was
out
a
with
question, it was just a
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
if you would like.
Sue. I don't know why you wouldn't, but let Don work that out with Sue. I'll see what I'm
You don't know why we wouldn't want to be there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
But let them, again, I don't want to speak for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. okay.
What else you
What's
got?
next?
Thank you for
All
that,
right.
gentlemen.
You're welcome. So, we were on transportation next, section 5. Again, the main change here is to take out all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines that describes the mathematical formula in accordance with section 4. So that is a change there. It'll be a much more streamlined section.
There you
Moving to section 6.
go. Wait, so, does this section even need to exist?
There has to be a way to describe how you're apportioning your transportation costs, so I mean, you could probably fit it in with a different section if you want to, but it has lived in its own section for, I guess, what, 80 years almost? 70 years. The admission and withdrawal of towns, we talked about this one at length last time. So mainly, there aren't any changes there. Most of the comments they had were prior to us getting the language that just references the DESI regulations. If there's a withdrawal of town, that would trigger the termination of the region. Section 7 has no changes. Section 8, just something that might not seem much, but it does have significance. So we had written here by 2/3 vote, and it's a 2/3 vote of the full committee. So this is unlike any other vote. You need 2/3 of the full committee, even if the full committee's not there.
Yeah.
So let's say if you have 5 members on the night that the budget's being voted, you need all 5
Right.
in order to pass it.
I don't think you've ever had that though, have you?
Not in my short time here.
No, we've been really good because we've all been working on it, you know, so. Just a quick one on the procedure for withdrawal. It doesn't say if the second town does not approve the withdrawal. Does it need to be stated that if one town says they want to withdraw and the other town says they don't want to withdraw, what's the result of that?
We do currently have language about that in this agreement.
Which is this
No,
agreement?
I think it's in here. Let me just read through it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it out loud. So I'm on section A. It says withdrawal of either town requires an affirmative vote of residents of each member town. Should be.
All right.
So that means, and then it says if either town votes to withdraw, the other town will schedule a vote at this next meeting. If the second town approves the withdrawal, then we contact the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Oh,
So that means it
all right.
requires permission from both towns.
I understand, yeah.
Okay, so, then in other, it's the language for recurring debt we talked about the last time, nothing else has changed. And then the only other change was, it's the commissioner of, it's the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, not just Department of Education. So, I will say that I would characterize the conversation we had yesterday as one of our more productive ones. I felt like there was a true understanding from DESI of what we're trying to do with this language. I said, okay, now I kind of get where you're heading. And they did say that they were hopeful that the next version we send is going to come back with many fewer edits. So I think we're getting close on something that will pass state muster if we can just get something that'll pass local muster.
What's the timeframe?
So we originally were talking about bringing it to the Springtown meetings, but that is fast approaching. So, I mean, we're March 4th, and so it just seems unreasonable with the timeline with DESI, the fact that we still have a few things to work out, I think, locally. So, you know,
Fall.
we could push it to the fall town meeting and it wouldn't change anything. It doesn't disrupt our process, but it also gives us the opportunity to not only finalize language and all of the edits that are required, but also to make sure that we can properly schedule, listening sessions, focus groups, but also being able to get the document into the public's hands to be able to review, ask questions, and be informed before town meeting.
I just wanted to make sure that's what the plan was, because that's what I thought it was going to be, but I wasn't there.
I personally would like this wrapped up as much as possible within the next month, right?
Our timeline wouldn't change, the only timeline that changes is
The vote.
getting to, yeah, the
Okay,
vote, which, I
okay.
mean, our town meeting is the end of October, right? Typically,
It's
the fall town
fall
meeting,
time
fall,
meeting
yeah.
after.
So, I mean, our timeline doesn't change, our meeting schedule will remain the same, but at least it gives us the opportunity to do things with time and making sure that we're able to, again, get it into the hands of the community members, stakeholders, ask questions. And we can schedule those, we can come up with a calendar and be able to schedule them appropriately to make sure that we're able to get as much.
I spoke to the town administrator about the idea of moving this to the fall, and we don't always have a fall town meeting, but his comments were he thought that alone would be sufficient reason to have a fall town meeting, so I see that being a positive.
And so we can make that recommendation to the school committee.
Yep. John, is there a way that you can get me, as it is now, clean of all the old crossouts? Just because I wanna, I read it and I go and I read what we've taken out. I wanna I have Thursday off and I wanna be able just to sit down and just read it, not get distracted as it would be an agreement, just to see if anything pops out.
So you want what we would call a non-red line version? It's just like what the new agreement would be?
What the new agreement would be,
Okay.
exactly, yeah.
Oh, I see, okay.
Is that too much, is that gonna mess things up? Is that too much work?
I just have to be very careful to create a separate document.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call it
Okay.
Oh, something else.
something else.
Sean's document.
Yeah.
Or something else?
Okay. Yeah.
Draft. Yes.
So the school committee will decide this week, are you meeting this week?
We are meeting this week.
So we're just going to, so we can either take it off and put it on,
Right.
We've left it on for now.
Okay, perfect,
We've left it on for now,
okay.
And then what we're hoping is that when the meeting of the select boards from both towns can come up with that language that we will put in under section,
so. Something D.
we have, section 4D.
Okay.
Right, so our cadence of meetings will not change.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue to move forward, so we can remain on schedule.
Yeah, super. And the two things that you're gonna check on are, do we need so much words about this weighted? We had a nice line in there before,
Mhm.
and we'd like to keep it as that and get rid of all the extra stuff. We understand what weighted vote is, we understand what we have to do, and the review will compare the voting ratio of each town, census as certified by the town clerk of each member town. I'm fine with that. I mean, they have like US census, whatever, let's see if we can get that back and.
So from Hamden's perspective, is the only concern from the Hamden board, the idea around the capital costs? I read the reminder last week, and I don't know if it portrayed accurately or not, but it portrayed that you guys had other concerns as well.
Oh, there's the weighted voting thing and everything, but
Yeah.
I straightened that out, it's been in there for 60 years, so
Okay.
just never did it, that's all.
Right. And I think that if we stuck to the language that's been in there for 60 years, that's served us for 60 years, and, anyone had a complaint about the new language, I think that would be.
I think that the weighted voting thing is, as long as the town, people understand it's a 5-2 vote anyhow, right? So as long as the town has 2 voices, that's the important part.
Right.
You know, 2 voices at the table, because the vote can always be 5 to 20. And generally, it's unanimous.
Very rarely, yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Very rarely is it, Hamden versus Wilbraham,
Yeah, yeah.
very rarely.
never,
Yeah.
since I've been on the committee. it's
Actually,
never-
right, even before then, even when it was, we were all in alignment. We really pretty much are in
in the
alignment.
same-
Yeah.
And, you know, if this doesn't work, we'll just put tariffs on anything from there. Anything from Wilbraham.
So we do, if everyone is okay, so currently on our calendar, we're off. So, we won't be meeting next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, 5:30, is everyone okay, so the same every other?
Okay, that'll give us time to maybe get a meeting together with the
Okay.
select board, so.
Whatever Aaron tells me
Perfect.
what meeting to go to, I make sure.
We do have a few minutes before we're done. We have guests. Is anyone interested in
I
making
have
a
a
comment or
quick
question?
question about the regional agreement piece. You guys can tell me if it's my first time actually looking at it versus hearing it and not really being able to reference anything. But the part that's redlined,
Page one?
yeah, page 1.
Yep.
At the very bottom, each member will be reviewed every 5 years. But then when you go to the bottom, it says in the yellow, each member will be reviewed by the committee every 10 years. So once it's 5 years, once it's 10 years. And is it important that it says reviewed by the committee? So that's the only question that I had about that one, the difference.
We're changing it to 10, right?
Yeah, so that was an edit that didn't follow all the way through. That's a good catch. Thank you for pointing that out.
No problem.
And that was determined by the committee was important because one of the pieces of feedback we got when we said, you know, we added this language in response to some of the feedback we got from the state, was they said, well, they said, well, how's it gonna be done? Is the superintendent gonna decide? Is the committee gonna decide? Are you gonna have another committee that's the waiting committee? So,
And then what drove me to come to the meeting, because again, when you're listening online, you don't necessarily get the full weight of what's here in writing. And I know that there's been talks about 80-20, and even having you two just kind of go back and forth with it, you kind of wonder, does that 80-20 actually work? So I was just gonna say, and I remember it's with a naive kind of idea, is there a way, or are we limited to calculate an operational budget for each school and then do the 80-20 for each student? I know people are looking for fairness, I think it's fair already, but I'm just throwing out maybe another idea, because this seemed, if Mark and Don are already kind of going back and forth, I do wonder how the two towns and the citizens will go back and
Well,
forth.
the only thing we're changing there is the operating budget isn't changing at all. The only thing we're suggesting is that we do a three-year weighted average to make the change in any given year less. Around the capital cost, this is all around Wilbraham Middle School.
No, and I understand that, I'm just looking at even going about that, saying,
I see.
if the calculation is now 80-20, do you have flexibility to come up with another way of dividing that? So
We've been asking that for years, and
I know, I'm just,
haven't been able to figure
well,
it out.
that's why I
right?
said, can you split it?
There is one that I think we have in here, but it has to be voted into being every year by both towns in order for it to happen.
So my idea is just wondering if you can split it into 2 tiers, where you have something that looks at the operation of each school, the cost of each school. And so you start that as a possible foundation, and then do something where you have that split for students. Because
So-
if you're using it as split for students, that's the part, like people, I understand what you're doing. I understand because I'm a teacher in the district, you have students at Green Meadows, you have students at Wilbraham Middle. I understand that people will say Hamden's paying 20% here, but they're paying 20% of every school in the district. I understand that we're paying 80% of every school in the district. So there's fairness there, but I'm just wondering if there's another possible way. And so the only thing that I looked at as fairness was, what does it cost to run the school? And this actually helped to define capital versus on the other costs. And then having that as a foundation of, this is what it costs to run this school, and this is what it costs to run this school, and then looking above that and doing an 80-20, because the students are dynamic, they change every year. You don't know where they're gonna end up
Wait,
sometimes.
but before I get lost on
Yeah,
this,
that's
so
okay.
you're saying with the capital costs of Green Meadows?
I didn't say capital, it's operational.
Hang on, but let me just,
Yeah.
you did say operational, but we can't have 2 operational budgets, at least in my head it didn't work.
Yeah.
But how it seems to me to work was, say, let's say that, let's, just for numbers, just say that 10% of the kids at Green Meadows are Wilbraham kids. So then any capital cost, Wilbraham would pay 10% of that. I'm just throwing.
No, I wasn't doing that.
No? Okay.
No.
I think you're asking the question I've been asking for 7 or
What's
8
the cost
years,
to run
basically,
the
how,
school?
is there a better way to track, to assess the towns? We've asked a number of times, I think you guys have reached out to Mars, I think there's been a lot of reach out. We've not come up with a better way that I'm aware
I
of.
don't know.
And I
I'm
wish
just
there
throwing
was,
it out.
because I agree, there's fixed cost to every building.
Exactly,
And you're not accounting for fixed costs when you're just using a variable enrollment check.
exactly.
And that's the issue. Unfortunately, no one's come up with a better way that I know of, and I wish there was.
But I figured I'd come here and I'd ask that question, looking at fixed costs versus like, not involving the children. And then
Yes.
kind of go from there. I'm,
Okay, now I understand.
yeah,
You're talking the fixed cost of each building, if we could have one formula for that, and then another formula for,
no
Instructional
formula,
services.
no formula, just like what does it cost to run that building? And then the formula works for the students on top of that, in some way. I mean, granted, you have to look at the whole thing of students for, like, how much it costs to run the district, so some way of creating a two-tiered system. I don't know, I think people are looking for another, maybe if you show them another way, or say how this other way does not work, and 80-20 is still the most fair. And still, until then, sometimes people are just constantly saying it's not fair and they're questioning it. And so, I want you to be able to go to your prospective town meetings and be able to answer everyone clearly. And that's gonna come up when you go to households or town, little smaller meetings to try to answer people about how the budget is split and why it's split this way. So it's just a question.
Unfortunately, there's not a good answer to that.
There's not a great answer.
No,
So I-
that's what we've come up with. And we've asked many, many different ways and many, many different times. Not necessarily this group, even, I mean, I've been talking about that in the
I know.
budget subcommittee meetings forever.
I hate to tell you this, but I follow them all going.
Sure. I'd like to just say that I think that Don represented very well the concerns of the voters in Hampden. I'm gonna throw this out there, this is risky, but I think when people on this committee are discussing Hampden and Hampden's voice, I have trouble with people saying, oh, you know, the Hampden, I just think that that's disrespectful of the people of Hampden, and I did hear this tonight, and I've heard it before. I think if you're going to talk about the people of Hampden, please don't give us a whiny, complaining voice that you're using.
oh, I'm sorry if I in any way did a whining.
I think you're talking about me.
No,
No,
well, I'm actually,
I did say Hamdenite, and
no,
I
no,
didn't think I was whiny
it's
or,
tone, it's tone.
yeah, I did not mean any
Yeah.
tone,
And I know you didn't, well, maybe, I don't think you intended for it to happen, I'm just saying that as an observer here, that I am hearing that sort of a tone, that the people of Hampden, I don't like them depicted as complainers or people who are looking for, you know,
I thought I said that if I was a member of Hamden, I would not be okay with this as written.
well, okay, Sean,
So I don't know.
I think, I don't, you know, I think that, this isn't necessarily completely directed to you. I've heard this in many meetings when people are trying to convey a voice of Hampden. Our concerns are very, very sincere. It has to do with money, and it's the question of fairness and the question of, well, we, you know, the children of Hampden have enjoyed, you know, the privilege of being at Wilbraham Middle School. I think we need to be straight up about that. It wasn't voluntary, all right? It was not voluntary. And so, you know, to say we're being really kind to Hampden and, no. This is what you voted for, and this is how it is. And, you know, anyway, it was not directed necessarily to any one person, but I am listening to this sort of a thing. And it concerns me as we go forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so we're adjourned, 7 o'clock.